to about leading men that you have
It's a pleasure.
acted with. I was going to use another word. When you're that attractive as you are, now, is it not true that the leading men would...
In 1974, Angie Dickinson changed TV forever by playing a tough cop. In 1980, she turned down what would become one of TV's biggest shows. But behind her glamorous Hollywood life lay a devastating secret. Her demanding role as TV's toughest female cop was destroying her marriage. The love of her life had chosen someone else after 20 years' affair. And her only daughter was fighting a battle no one understood, until she took her own life. This is the untold story of how Hollywood's golden girl lost everything she loved. Angie Dickinson was born on September 30th, 1931, in the small town of Culm, North Dakota. She grew up as the middle of 3 daughters in a family with German roots. Her parents, Leo and Frederica Brown, worked hard to make ends meet during the tough years of the Great Depression. Her father, Leo, ran 2 small newspapers, the Culm Messenger and the Edgeley Mail. Angie spent her childhood around printing presses and news stories, which sparked her dream of becoming a writer. She was bright and creative, even winning a prestigious essay contest in high school. Her sister, Janet, later won the same contest, proving talent ran in the family. Life at home wasn't always easy. The Depression crushed Leo's dreams of success, and he turned to alcohol to cope. Despite his struggles, he remained a key figure in the town. He even worked as a projectionist at the local movie theater, which became a magical place for young Angie. Sitting with her dad in the booth, she fell in love with the magic of movies. That love stayed with her, even after the theater burned down. When Angie was 10, her family moved to Burbank, California, hoping for a fresh start. Life in California was a big change. Angie's mom found work as a proofreader at a local paper, but her dad struggled to find steady jobs. Even so, Angie thrived in school. She graduated from high school at just 15 years old and went on to college, studying business while working as a secretary to support herself. She was determined and focused, doing her best to build a future. In 1953, everything changed because of a last-minute decision. Angie entered a local beauty pageant just a day before the deadline. To her surprise, she won second place. This turned out to be a lucky break. A casting agent saw her there and thought she had potential. The agent helped her land her first entertainment job as one of 6 showgirls on the Jimmy Durante Show. Working on Durante's show put her in front of the right people. A television producer noticed her and suggested she consider becoming an actress. Dickinson took this advice seriously and dedicated herself to studying acting. Her hard work paid off when NBC began offering her guest spots on various variety shows, including the popular Colgate Comedy Hour. During this time, she met Frank Sinatra, who would become one of her closest friends throughout her life. This meeting was just the beginning of what would become a remarkable career in Hollywood. Angie Dickinson stepped into Hollywood quietly in 1954, starting with a tiny role you might miss if you blinked, an uncredited part in Lucky Me, which starred Doris Day. But she kept pushing forward, taking roles in westerns and action films like The Return of Jack Slade and Man with the Gun in 1955, followed by Hidden Guns in 1956. Dickinson made a bold choice early in her career. While many actresses were trying to copy Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield's platinum blonde bombshell look, she decided to go her own way. She knew that being typecast as a sex symbol would limit her acting opportunities. She did make one concession to Hollywood's preferences, letting them lighten her natural brown hair to honey blonde, but that was as far as she'd go. In 1959, everything changed for Angie when she starred in the movie Rio Bravo. She was 27 years old, acting alongside John Wayne, who was already a Hollywood legend at 51. They filmed the movie in Old Tucson, Arizona, where Angie played Feathers, a gambler who falls for John Wayne's character, Sheriff Chance. Angie was nervous because she didn't have much acting experience, but John Wayne, who insisted everyone call him Duke, was kind and patient. Their chemistry on screen was so good that Angie later joked that if Wayne hadn't been married, they might have had some fun together off camera. The character of Feathers was a turning point for Angie. Unlike most women in westerns at that time, Feathers was bold, smart, and confident. In one unforgettable scene, Feathers stays up all night to guard Sheriff Chance with a shotgun, which deepens their connection. Angie's playful line, "Hey, Sheriff, you forgot your pants," became iconic. Her feathered costumes added to her glamorous image and made her stand out even more. Years later, in 2014, Rio Bravo was added to the National Film Registry, forever marking it as a classic. Angie often joked about how close she came to missing out on Hollywood altogether. She'd laugh and say she might have ended up working at See's Candies if Howard Hawks, the director of Rio Bravo, hadn't cast her. She shared this story in 2023 at the TCM Classic Film Festival, where they showed a restored version of the film. Angie remembered how overwhelming it was to sit at a dinner party with John Wayne, Howard Hawks, and the rest of the cast. She was under a lot of pressure, but the role of Feathers became her big break, launching a career that spanned more than 50 movies and the groundbreaking TV show Policewoman. In 1960, Angie Dickinson joined the Rat Pack for the movie Ocean's 11, playing Danny Ocean's wife, Beatrice. The Rat Pack, Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Sammy Davis Jr., and others, had a unique way of working. During the day, they filmed their scenes. At night, they performed live shows at the Sands Hotel in Las Vegas. Filming was casual. If a scene took more than 2 tries, they considered it a waste of time. The movie was full of jokes and unscripted moments, feeling almost like a personal project for the group. Sinatra even used his influence to cut down Davis's role in the final version. Critics didn't take the movie seriously and called it a vanity project, but audiences loved it. The final scene, where the gang walks past a casino marquee showing their real names, became iconic. In 1967, Angie starred in Point Blank, a movie that changed her career. She played Chris, a woman tangled in lies and betrayal, opposite Lee Marvin. The story followed Marvin's character as he hunted for stolen money. The movie was different from most others at the time. In one scene, Marvin didn't say his lines during rehearsal, forcing Angie to carry the moment on her own. The director liked it so much he kept it that way. When Point Blank first came out, people didn't pay much attention to it, but over time, it became a classic, capturing the gritty mood of the 1960s. Angie later said the movie wasn't noticed back then because it didn't have the flash of films like Easy Rider. 3 years earlier, in 1964, Angie worked with Marvin on another movie, The Killers. This film was Ronald Reagan's last before he entered politics. Angie played Sheila Farr, a femme fatale involved in a $1 million heist. The movie was supposed to be for TV, but it was considered too violent and was released in theaters instead. Critics praised Angie's performance, saying she brought a cool and edgy energy to the role. The opening scene, where hitmen attack a man at a school for the blind, shocked audiences with its intensity. The chemistry between Angie and Marvin made the movie unforgettable, and it left a lasting mark on crime films. In 1971, Angie starred in one of her most talked-about films, Pretty Maids All in a Row. It was a mix of dark comedy, mystery, and scandal. Written by Star Trek creator Gene Roddenberry, the story followed a high school full of secrets. Angie played Miss Smith, a teacher who has an affair with a shy student. The movie pushed boundaries with its explicit content, and it caused an uproar. It was filmed at a real high school, and later, the school's officials admitted they shouldn't have allowed it. Playboy magazine even published a photo spread of Angie and her co-stars to promote the film. Angie later said the movie was daring, even by today's standards. While critics didn't like it much at the time, it has since become a cult favorite. Quentin Tarantino even named it one of the best films ever made. In 1974, Angie Dickinson did something no woman had done before. She became the first to lead an hour-long dramatic police show. At 43 years old, she starred as Sergeant Pepper Anderson in Policewoman, breaking the rules of Hollywood, which usually favored younger women. The show was an instant hit, premiering on September 13, 1974, and quickly becoming one of the top-rated programs on TV. Angie's character worked undercover for the LAPD, taking on dangerous missions involving criminals like serial killers and human traffickers. People loved how she was tough, but also graceful, showing that women could handle anything the male-dominated police dramas had to offer. The show even inspired women across the U.S. to apply for jobs in law enforcement, something that had never happened on such a large scale before. Even President Gerald Ford was hooked. He once delayed a press conference just so he wouldn't miss an episode. After the show ended in 1978, Dickinson kept playing with the image of her character, Pepper Anderson. She appeared as Pepper in a TV special called Ringo, with Beatles drummer Ringo Starr and actor John Ritter. She also poked fun at her role in Bob Hope's Christmas shows in 1975 and 1979, and later on, Saturday Night Live in 1987. But being the star of Policewoman wasn't easy. Over 4 years, Angie filmed 91 episodes, more than 20 episodes per season, with each one almost an hour long. She later admitted it was one of the hardest things she had ever done. Angie had to be in almost every scene, which meant long days of shooting. She woke up before dawn for makeup and costume changes, often transforming into different characters for her undercover roles. One day she might play a nurse, and the next, a flight attendant or a teacher. There were also action scenes that demanded a lot of energy, sometimes filmed outdoors in tough weather. Angie called the experience horrendous and said it drained her completely. Looking back in 2019, she expressed regret about doing the series. The pay wasn't good enough, she felt, and the demanding schedule kept her from taking on other interesting roles. Angie later said that the show took 4 years of her life, leaving her feeling empty and worn out. The stress even affected her personal life, contributing to her divorce from composer Burt Bacharach in 1981. Moreover, Dickinson was direct about her position as a sex symbol on television. "Are my legs exploited? Well, that's all I got to sell," she said frankly. While she understood that, essentially, a woman's job is being a woman in the entertainment industry of that time, she grew tired of scenes that seemed designed just to show her in a bath when the phone would ring. Despite all this, Angie's work on Policewoman didn't go unnoticed. She was nominated for an Emmy 3 years in a row, from 1975 to 1977, and won a Golden Globe in 1975 for Best TV Actress in a Drama. This was a huge deal at the time. It proved that people loved seeing a strong woman lead a show in a genre that had been all about men. Policewoman paved the way for other hit shows featuring powerful women like Charlie's Angels, Wonder Woman, and Cagney and Lacey. Angie's performance wasn't just memorable, it changed television, showing that women could be the stars of action-packed, dramatic stories too. While Policewoman was so successful, Angie's presence in major films had begun to fade, and many wondered if her best days on the big screen were behind her. But 1980 brought an unexpected and thrilling turn in her story. Director Brian De Palma offered her a role that would remind everyone of her incredible talent, the part of Kate Miller in his thriller Dressed to Kill. The role was challenging and complex. Kate was a New York housewife trapped in the frustrations of her ordinary life. What made Dickinson's performance particularly remarkable was a lengthy scene in an art museum where she never spoke a word. Using just her expressions and movements, she held audiences spellbound as her character wandered through the museum, leading to a fate that would shock viewers. Her powerful portrayal earned her the 1981 Saturn Award for Best Actress, and even the tough critics at the New York Times were impressed, with Vincent Canby specifically praising her work. The following year, Dickinson reunited with her old friend and co-star Lee Marvin in Death Hunt. While this role was smaller than her part in Dressed to Kill, It showed she could still command attention on screen. She also appeared in Charlie Chan and the Curse of the Dragon Queen, keeping herself active in the industry. In 1980, what seemed like a golden opportunity landed in Angie Dickinson's lap. Johnny Carson, the king of late-night television, had personally produced a sitcom built around her star power, The Angie Dickinson Show. On paper, it looked perfect. A beloved actress, a legendary producer, and a show bearing her own name. The cameras rolled, and 2 episodes were filmed. But something didn't feel right to Dickinson. As she watched herself in those early episodes, an uncomfortable truth settled in. Despite her success in drama, action, and westerns, comedy was different territory altogether. With remarkable honesty, Dickinson made a bold decision. She approached the producers and admitted, "I'm just not funny enough for this." The show was canceled after just 2 episodes, but her integrity remained intact. But perhaps the most interesting part of Dickinson's story during this time wasn't about the roles she took. It was about the ones she turned down. In 1981, television producers approached her with what would become one of the decade's most famous roles: Crystal Carrington in a new show called Dynasty. On paper, it seemed perfect, a glamorous part in what promised to be a major television series. But Dickinson had something more important on her mind: her daughter. Faced with the choice between a potentially career-defining role and spending time with her child, she chose family. The role went to Linda Evans, and Dynasty became a massive hit. A few years later, history repeated itself when producers offered her another promising role: Sable Colby in The Colbys, a spin-off from Dynasty. Once again, Dickinson declined, staying true to her priorities. But Angie Dickinson wasn't done yet. She reinvented herself through a string of compelling television movies. In One Shoe Makes It Murder, 1982, she brought tension and drama to the screen. Jealousy and A Touch of Scandal, both 1984, allowed her to explore complex emotional territories. Still Watch, 1987, proved she could still command attention in suspenseful roles. Her biggest television triumph of this period came with Hollywood Wives, 1985, the steamy Jackie Collins miniseries that had viewers glued to their screens. The decade closed with a meaningful honor, the Golden Boot Award in 1989, recognizing her lasting contributions to Western cinema. It was a fitting tribute to an actress who had refused to let setbacks define her, who had the courage to walk away from sure things when they didn't feel right, and who consistently surprised audiences with new facets of her talent. Angie Dickinson's life off-screen is full of interesting stories, especially her connection with Frank Sinatra. Angie and Sinatra's story began in 1953. They met on the Colgate Comedy Hour. Sinatra's bodyguard called Angie to his dressing room, where Sinatra boldly asked if she was attached. At the time, Angie was married, and so was Sinatra, but he still asked for her number. That moment started a long and complicated romance. Angie later called it a 20-year on-and-off relationship. She became an important part of Sinatra's world. Angie was even part of Sinatra's famous Rat Pack, the only woman in the group. Everyone in the Rat Pack respected her, and she was often at their side, playing cards or just being part of the fun. Angie admitted Sinatra was the love of her life. In 1964, Angie Dickinson and Frank Sinatra came very close to getting married. They were deeply in love, and their relationship had reached a serious point. Sinatra had just ended his marriage to Ava Gardner, and Angie had been divorced from her first husband, Gene Dickinson, for a few years. They talked about marriage that spring, but it never happened. What made it more surprising was that Sinatra married Mia Farrow just 2 years later, even though he had told Angie he would never marry another actress. Even after their romance ended, their bond stayed strong. They were close friends for decades, all the way until Sinatra's death in 1998. They supported each other through thick and thin. In 1977, they appeared together on The Tonight Show starring Johnny Carson. Angie later described Sinatra as difficult, wonderful, brave, and foolish. She called him one of the most charismatic men she had ever known and praised not just his singing, but also his kindness and charm. It was a mix of love, friendship, and respect that lasted a lifetime. Apart from that, Angie Dickinson and Burt Bacharach's love story started like a scene from a romantic movie. They met in 1965, and within 3 months, they were married in Las Vegas on May 15th. Their wedding had a quirky twist. Chuck Barris, a game show host they found at a casino, served as their drunken witness. After marrying, they settled in a beachside home in Del Mar, California. Burt worked on his music there, while Angie stepped back from her acting career to support him. Together, they lit up every room they entered. People couldn't help but stop and stare at their charm and star power. But behind the glamour, their marriage wasn't perfect. Burt admitted to having several affairs, and the stress caused their relationship to fall apart. They divorced in 1981 after 16 years together. Still, Burt never stopped caring for Angie. Every year, he sent her orchids for her birthday and Christmas, right up until his death in 2023. Reflecting on their relationship, Angie said, "He was a great giver of himself, but we didn't belong together. It was a bad mix." Their daughter, Leah Nikki Bacharach, was born on July 12, 1966, in a terrifying and uncertain moment. Angie went into labor 6 months into her pregnancy, and doctors didn't think the baby would survive. Nikki was born tiny, weighing just 1 pound and 10 ounces. She spent her first 3 months alone in an incubator, as even her parents weren't allowed to touch her. Somehow, Nikki made it through, but her early struggles left lasting challenges. She had trouble with her vision and took longer than usual to speak. As she grew older, she showed unique behaviors, like keeping every little thing she came across and being easily upset by loud noises. Despite this, Nikki had a bright mind and a love for science. She studied geology at Cal Lutheran University, managing just 1 class at a time because of her vision problems. Nikki's life wasn't easy, and it ended tragically on January 4, 2007. She was 40 years old when she took her own life, after years of struggling with Asperger's syndrome, which wasn't properly diagnosed until later in her life. Nikki carefully planned her death, using a plastic bag and helium gas. Her parents, heartbroken, shared that she had taken her life to escape the ravages to her brain brought on by Asperger's. They described her as someone who loved kitties, earthquakes, meteor showers, sunsets, and Tahiti. Nikki left a note for her father, but Burt chose not to read it. "I already know what she said," he explained. "I never will read it." Even after her death, Nikki remains in her parents' hearts. Angie, now 91, says she thinks about her daughter every single day. Burt also struggled with guilt over choices made during Nikki's life, especially about sending her to a school in Minnesota designed to help her gain independence. Nikki spent 9 years there, but it was a difficult decision for the family. Burt had written a song called Nikki to celebrate her survival as a baby, and it became a bittersweet reminder of her life. Nikki loved learning about the world, especially the stars and planets. At a party for Ray Bradbury, she marveled at Mars and the Andromeda Galaxy through a telescope. Despite her challenges, Nikki's curiosity and love for science shone bright, leaving a lasting impression on everyone who knew her. At 91, Angie Dickinson lives a life built on simple but effective habits. She mostly follows a vegetarian diet, but allows herself the occasional treat of country fried chicken. This balance started in 1959, during the filming of Rio Bravo, when she noticed plant-based meals gave her more energy. Instead of strict rules, Angie's approach focuses on moderation, which has helped her stay vibrant for decades. Gardening is a daily ritual that keeps her active and grounded. Every morning, she spends hours tending to her half-acre garden, filled with vegetables, herbs, and flowers. She started gardening over 40 years ago during her policewoman days, using it as a way to relax. Even now, she does all the work herself, showing her deep connection to this routine. Angie also values good sleep. For over 60 years, she's stuck to an 8-hour schedule, going to bed at 10 p.m. and waking up at 6 a.m. She avoids screens before bedtime and keeps her room cool at 65 degrees. A habit she discovered during her Hollywood years. Her consistent routine reflects her belief in the importance of rest. Her dinner habits are just as disciplined. She never eats after 6 p.m., keeps portions small, and often uses vegetables from her garden. Angie prefers small plates, a practice she picked up in the 1950s, and avoids drinking water during meals, following advice from her mother. She still prepares all her meals herself, valuing the connection it gives her to her food. What's most remarkable is how active she remains. Angie refuses to rely on modern conveniences like dishwashers or automatic garage doors. She does her own housework, climbs stairs daily, and views these small tasks as both exercise and meditation. This constant movement has been her key to staying healthy and strong without needing structured workouts. On September 10, 1987, Angie Dickinson received a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame at 7000 Hollywood Boulevard. By then, she had already spent decades in show business, starring in more than 50 films and appearing in many TV shows. People admired her for her talent and charm. She was even ranked number 3 on TV Guide's 50 Sexiest TV Stars of All Time, and number 42 on Playboy's 100 Sexiest Stars of the Century. Angie wasn't just popular, she was groundbreaking. Her role in Policewoman made history as the first time a woman led a TV crime drama. She won a Golden Globe for it and proved women could be heroes on screen, too. Even though Angie was known for her beauty, she refused to let it define her. In the 1950s and 1960s, actresses like Marilyn Monroe and Jane Mansfield were seen as sex symbols first and actresses second. But Angie didn't want to follow that path. She enjoyed the attention her looks brought, once saying, "I enjoyed being a sex symbol very much." Still, she focused on choosing roles with depth and character. She wanted people to respect her as an actress, not just admire her looks. She even compared herself to Marilyn Monroe, saying, "Like Marilyn, she was known as the greatest sex symbol of all time. Boy, try to do Shakespeare after that." Angie wasn't just looking out for herself. She was helping to change how Hollywood viewed women. Angie also controlled how she looked on screen, which was rare at the time. Studios often decided how their actresses should dress and style their hair. But Angie pushed back. She refused to bleach her hair beyond a honey blonde color, insisting on keeping her natural look. This might seem like a small thing, but it was a bold choice in the 1970s when blonde bombshells were still the standard. Angie balanced her beauty with strength. She played sexy characters, but they were always smart, capable, and heroic. She once said, "I loved being a heroine, and I loved that she was allowed to be sexy and still a hero." Her role in Policewoman showed that women could be strong and feminine at the same time. Her work in Policewoman even earned her recognition from the real police. In 1987, the Los Angeles Police Department gave her an honorary doctorate. Angie's reaction? She joked, "Now you can call me Dr. Pepper." That humor and charm were part of what made her so beloved.